Hey guys, I just wanted to take this opportunity and inform you about our amazing virtual summit called the Game Changers Summit coming up in January 21st, 22nd, 23rd. It features some of the biggest thought leaders and game-changing speakers from around the world. It is for established business owners and entrepreneurs that are stuck, that are plateaued, and are ready to take things to the next level. We're going to give you some new ideas, some new tools, some new tactics, some new strategies. We're going to be going through all of the amazing stuff to do with leadership, to do with marketing, branding. We're going to give you so much great value. It's insane. And guess what? It's free. Yes, that's right. It is free. If you want to take the opportunity and come and join us for the 3-day event, I shit you not, it's going to be one of the biggest, baddest, biggest events in the whole world. So make sure that you click on thegamechangersummit.com and make sure you click on that because it's a free event. You cannot miss it for no love, no money. So I will see you there January 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and we'll see you there. Take care. Bye.
This is the Game Changers Experience. Deep dive conversations with leading business disruptors, Olympic athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and influencers from around the world. This show will teach you insights about the winning principles in mindset, productivity, marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, business strategy, and more. Hosted by Productivity Authority, business strategist, former elite athlete, author, and public speaker, Adam Strong.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Game Changers audio experience with myself, Adam Strong. And today we have another fun-packed show. And this is actually we're actually going to be talking about a really interesting subject that we haven't actually spoken about on this show before. And what I love about, different topics, different conversations is that, you just never know where the conversations diversify. So who have we got on today's show? We've got on today's show is Mark Sephton. Mark is a mentor to entrepreneurs. He's a podcast host for Brainz Magazine, and he's also the author of 3 books. One of them has just come out, and it's called Mark Otherman. He's also a personal mentor for entrepreneurs and has worked with millionaires alike, and has got an abundance of different business background as well. And today's talk is we're going to be talking a little bit about masculine and feminine energy. We're also going to be talking about how we can apply that masculine and feminine energy in the world of leadership. We're also going to be talking about the differences, how you can apply certain leadership principles in relation to this certain energy as well. And we're also going to be having a chat to Mark a little bit about his podcast and his new book as well. So Mark, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Adam. And really looking forward to what you've got in store for us today. I always think that the most beautiful and intriguing and curious podcasts are always ones that are really authentic, they're from the heart, and they just have the ability to just flow. And I think for me, they're the ones that really bring kind of a greater sense of understanding and people are keen to hear. So I'm hoping that I can give your listeners as much as I can from a place of, great energy and insight.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. It's really good. And interestingly enough, I mean, I'm a big fan of energy. Energy is a big fascination for me. I know that my good friend Simon Ong as well, who's also a big fan on Clubhouse as well. We talk about energy in terms of productivity, but we're going to be talking a little bit different in terms of energy and how it applies. But let's just start off, actually, Mark. I know that I'd like to talk a little bit about masculine and feminine energy and the differences between the two so that we can kind of make a clear distinction between the two, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is fascinating energy. And I think that, I'm coming from a place of where, I hear the feminists, I've heard the bigots, I've heard and I've seen, the parallel opposites of understanding and positioning and posturing between men and women. And what I'd like to say from the start is, while I believe men and women should have equality in the sense if a man and woman do the same job, absolutely they should be recompensed accordingly. I do believe that men and women are different, and so therefore, in some ways, I don't feel we're equal, because there's some things that women do on planet Earth that are way better than men can ever do, and we just need to get out of a woman's way and let her lead. I also think it's the same on the other side of the coin. There's things that men really excel at, and you know what, women, you need to get out of our way and let us lead too. And for me, I really am in the business of reminding people that a man and woman coming together is to complement, to create a symphony, rather than this kind of wrestling match for who leads and when. And I think a lot of the masculine and feminine energy and the topic around it, and what fascinates me, is actually, if we can both find the right rhythm, we're actually going to bring more healing to each other. You know, we always hear hurting people hurt people. Well, healed people heal people as well. And I think that needs to be the flip of where we need to take, I guess, our life and our mandate. You know, whatever we do, is that we actually are starting to bring more healing, more leadership into this whole area of understanding. And yeah, as we talk about the masculine and the feminine, you know, deeper in this conversation, you know, for me, it has to start with us thinking and processing and reflecting on who we really are as a man or as a woman, and what that really looks like for us. And then it's from that, then we can make strides to actually create what I call this symphony.
Interesting. You know, I actually didn't think this was going to come up so soon, because you mentioned there was something that came, you know, off the back of that conversation, which was all this kind of, you know, this whole kind of pro women and pro men, but more pro women, I would say. You know, this kind of, empowerment, you know. What's your kind of take on this? You know, pro women, you know, kind of, you know, support the women, support the men type of thing. I mean, what's your take on all this? It sounds a bit kind of, I suppose, a bit immature in a way.
It's interesting, because when I reflect on my own personal beliefs, I've never, and it's the same with race and religion and all those other segregations that you have. I see a person, you know, so it's interesting for me when I see these women only groups, and I'm thinking, you know what, if there was a men only group, there'd be uproar. Now, I appreciate I'm not a woman.
It's so true.
It's so true.
It is so true. Or you're called a sexist bigot or whatever it might be. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh my God. I'm so glad you said that.
Well, it is so true. And it's interesting for me, because I almost feel offended almost by it, because I'm like, I would never separate the two. Now, I understand I've never been a woman. I would make a shocking woman. And so I can't appreciate, obviously, some of the negative stigma that women will have faced in what they call a man's world. And I think that that's certainly started to change a lot. But I feel like it is going too much the other way. And I think that, you know, as a man, we need to, I think, take ownership for some of the negative, I guess, experiences women have faced. I certainly talk about that in my book, about how men don't really conduct themselves. And I'm speaking generally here, because there's some great men, of course, on planet Earth, but there's a lot of men that don't even know how to look at a woman properly, both with his physical eyes, but also the eyes of his heart. You know, like, you know, because I've got two daughters as well, it makes me very mindful of me, you know, wanting to challenge men. And a part of me writing this book actually is to make sure that when my daughters reach an age of dating and marriage, that I've influenced a few men in the way that they conduct themselves. And I think that's really, really important as well. But yeah, going to the initial part of, you know, my thoughts on, you know, women empowerment and men empowerment. I'm into people empowerment, but I'm very much mindful that we do need to come together now and stop fighting.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, I think you're absolutely right, and I don't know if it's a perception that's been created, or that society has been conditioned into thinking that, you know, it's like a battle between the sexes. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's a power struggle, right? Who's gonna have the more senior executive position? Who's gonna have more the leadership role and that kind of stuff? And we both know that, you know, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on as well in the show, is is the positions of power and influence. And we'll talk about that because I think it's an interesting conversation. Just while we're on this subject, in terms of behaviors, should we say, how does the behavior of men differentiate between the behavior of women, particularly in the business world? Any thoughts there, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's interesting because in some ways you can't turn on and off a switch. You know, I can't remember who says it, and it's probably one of the most said cliches, but the way you do anything's the way you do everything. There's that sense of, you know, I don't think that, you know, privately you can be one way and then totally different professionally. I think eventually you get found out. And I think that, you know, when it comes to in business, I mean, typically how men are built is we're the ones that tend to be the ones to go out, want the adventure, we pursue, we have vision, you know, and tend to be bringing out the confidence in a vision. And then I would say women, beautiful in terms of their detail, give it a consciousness, let it be with heart. So I find that you're adding heart and empathy to vision and strategy. You know, there's definitely certain elements that I can really see women really lead, especially with detail, and making it look, you know, it's incredible actually. Like when I was doing my book launch, I'd taken pictures of the book for social media, and then a couple of my friends who are women, they started taking pictures and they shared them with me, and I was like, wow, that's so much better than my picture. And I was quite happy with my picture, but they put it to a different level, and it just made it more appealing.
Yeah,
you know, and I think that's interesting for me. It's like you have the body and then you have the spirit, and I find that men, as a metaphor, tend to be the one that create the skeleton, and the woman is the one that dresses it and, you know, glamifies it. Yeah.
That's a good analogy. I like that. That's a really interesting part in terms of you know, just sort of kind of on that subject or whatever it is. But you know, when we talk about behaviors, and we're going to think about habits as well, habits of business, in terms of the way, you know, maybe a man should or shouldn't behave. Because I know, you know, you hear of especially in positions of power, whether it be senior management or whatever it might be, where you get maybe an accusation or a perception that a woman, okay, is basically using masculine energy in order to get what she wants, and maybe a man uses feminine energy, right? But you know, maybe that maybe they're seen as a weak person or whatever it is. Let's talk about some of those false perceptions in the business world, because there are a lot of false perceptions. I think there is a lot of false perceptions, and maybe it creates poor judgment on people's opinions based on that individual. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why there's so much confusion, and maybe we're dressing ourselves like not correctly, is because of, I think, some of the mistakes that in history, you know, we've made. And like I said, I've never been a woman, so I've never experienced what it feels like to walk into, like, I don't know, the canteen area of a workplace, and you've got 20 eyes on you, and it's a little uncomfortable, you know, and feeling like, oh, can't I just be, you know, valued for my brain rather than, you know, my beauty? Whereas I think for a man, you know, we don't have those same sort of responses. I can't think of a time I thought, you know, I'd probably quite like 20 eyes on me, if I'm honest, Adam. You know, and it probably wouldn't make me feel uncomfortable. You know, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that sometimes we feel like we have to be something that we're not, because we're wanting to fit in. Or I think identity is a really big challenge right now, especially for the younger generation of what does a man really look like, and what does a woman really look like, and how, you know, we're talking about behaviors and my favorite thought on behaviors is your belief determines your behavior. So what you believe is true, you then behave out of that. And like I've already said, you know, when I look at a human being, that's exactly what I see. I don't have a problem taking leadership from a woman. Therefore, my behavior will be one where I'm engaged, I'm listening to what a woman says or what a man says, or even what a child says, because I believe that I can learn from anybody and everybody, you know, and you have to have that willingness to open yourself up. But I think our identity is where it kind of, there's a misconception there, because I think people don't know how they should behave because they don't even know what they believe, you know. And I think that everything comes down to what do we believe is true, and then our behavior is very much an expression of our belief.
You know, it's an interesting thought. I mean, what dictates how you should behave and how you should not behave? Who dictates that? Because from my perspective, no one dictates it. It's our beliefs, like you mentioned, your beliefs, your judgments, and kind of, I suppose, our experience and our upbringing. I guess many of those things. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, which is a good one. Interestingly, I want to bring back a point that you made earlier on, and something which I really kind of want to touch on, which again I think is extremely important, but exploring why there are more men in positions of power and influence compared to women. Because interestingly enough, we know that in publications like Gallup, that in the Fortune 500 companies, if they have a balanced, say 50-50, or, you know, there's a good balance between men and women on the senior management board, we know those companies are far more profitable, they're far more productive and engaged, and, you know, tick all the boxes compared to other companies. But from your perspective, Mark, I mean, you know, you're in business, you mentor with smaller companies as well as larger companies. What's your thoughts of the reasons why men are still have that position of power and influence compared to maybe women? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, you know, there's a number of reasons that come to mind. I think that, and I'll tread carefully here as well. I think there is a degree where women disqualify themselves. And I think some of that's based on a couple of reasons. One would be choice, because I think, and I'm stereotyping here, but in most cases, if you have children within a relationship, then women will want to invest and develop and nurture their children. And obviously that's a choice for each couple and relationship to decide. That's just what I've experienced and what I deem to be true. You know, so I think there's that side of it, of the fact that there's always going to be, you know, that pause in a woman's career where the opportunities may elude her because she's reached a point where she's serving her family before she's serving her career. So I think there's some of that. And there is some exceptions where men actually have started to take more of a house husband. I know my sister's husband did that role for a number of years. And so I know that is starting, but I think that's one of the reasons why, because I think there is that sense of women taking care of the children. And also, you know, like I said about disqualifying themselves, I feel like, you know, there's certain challenges that men and women face. And I find that I can understand why for women it's harder. And I'm so impressed by women who do have children and are hustling and creating and achieving. I think fair play, because I think, you know, I have my kids pretty much every week or every other weekend. So I still have Monday to Friday where I can hustle. Whereas, you know, typically, especially if you come from a split family, you know, you have the mother who's got the kids 70% of the time and really able to achieve anything is absolutely incredible. So I think that a couple of those reasons as to why men still probably have more of a dominion on that. I also think that there's still going to be a part of the fact that, you know, there's probably some beliefs there that still believe women shouldn't be in places of power, just like there's sadly racism on the planet. It still exists. So there is still going to be blocks. And then I think that, now that we're starting to see a shift because of the crazy ass pandemic, and now people are working from home and remotely, I think that may actually open a door for there to be more women leadership. And I think that would suit them better because of the lifestyle they have.
Yep.
Whereas in an office, it's very much tailored, for a man. And I think there'd be some of my reasons, Adam, as to why.
Yep. And it's interesting, guys, because here's the thing. If you're listening into what me and Mark are talking about, right? And I don't know about you guys, but you have to be very careful about what you say, because we don't want to cause offense, but essentially it is, it's very subjective. It's very much, okay, it's someone else's opinion. But again, it's a bit like it's basically trying to break some of the stigmas around, sort of men and women and, and management leadership. Because I don't know, what do you think, Mark? Do you think there's a lot of stigma around the whole kind of men and women kind of scenario and energy? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, well, it's interesting because actually when you were talking, a joke came to mind, actually.
No sexist jokes on this show, please. No, I'm kidding.
No, it's not really a sexist joke. Otherwise I wouldn't share it yet. I'm hoping that I have some wisdom in my 40 years. But it is, I'm very mindful of the fact that actually, as a man, I can't speak for women because I've never been one, and women can't speak for men because they've never been one.
Yeah.
But the joke was they've proven that being kicked in the balls is far more worse than childbirth. And the reason why they've settled on this is because after a woman has gone through labor and pain, a year later, she's ready to have another child. But you never hear a man say, I can't wait to be kicked in the balls again.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. By the way, that doesn't give anyone the inclination of, we're not telling you to go, knee someone in the balls just for the entertainment of it. We don't want you to do that, okay?
Exactly. But that's what came to mind when you were talking, because I was thinking about, there's certain things in life we just got to accept we can't experience. When somebody says, if they say, oh, I've just lost my mother or my father, and you've not lost, your mother or your father,
yeah,
you can't say I know how you feel, because you don't actually. You're better off to say, actually, I don't know how you feel, but I'm here. You'll need to reset me on the question, Adam, because I got lost in my own joke there, my own humor.
Oh, don't worry about it. It's all good. I was just talking about the different stigmas around the whole kind of conversations between men and women energy, because some people can come across and take it the wrong way. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, well,
they can, and I think that there is times where we need to be more sensitive as men, but then I also think there's more times where women equally need to not take things so personally. I think humor is a good one if it's done in the right way, because it just kind of, I look at the things that are universal, and laughter is something that is absolutely universal. Regardless of where you are, your education, whatever, we can all laugh. So I always try and encourage people to find things that we both do with freedom and expression.
Yep.
And then it's through that means that actually we're able to journey together. But I think until men start being honest, and women do the same, because one thing that I've really been gleaning from, especially in Clubhouse, is women really require men to be both vulnerable and empathetic. Now, what I've challenged women with is the fact that when a man is vulnerable, please don't use our vulnerability to then hurt us. Because I think that if you're asking us to be and give you one thing, and then you use that against us, you're really not encouraging men to be vulnerable. So I think we have to be mindful of that which we ask of the other sex, that we also then create a space and time for us to walk and develop in that. Otherwise, I tell you, discouragement is it really does take the wind out of your sails, especially if you're trying, especially if you're trying to be something that you may not have been because of, I don't know, various traumas or attachment theory from when you were a child, having to walk through that. I think that's really important.
Good point, actually. I liked the way that you kind of made that sort of apparent, because I think that, and it's interesting because I think the word, especially in the world of leadership, the use of empathy prior to, our crazy times that we're in right now was few and far between, in fairness. But now what I'm noticing more in the leadership realm and in terms of management and running your own business is that both men and women use empathy more, because it's that kind of understanding of, again, going back to human psychology, right? Understanding, giving them support, whatever it is. But from a men's perspective, right? How should men show more vulnerability and empathy with their teams, with their clients, their customers, or whatever it is? What's your thoughts? How should people do that?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say that I'd like to see myself as somebody who's really personal, and I think inclusivity is one of the strengths that I have, and I think that comes from, I know what it's like to have been bullied, at school and been isolated. I think when you go through, I always say you can never lead anybody from a place you've not been yourself before, and that's the great thing that I love about when I hurt most, I grow most, because I know there will be a time in the future that the pain I went through will then serve somebody else and bring healing to them. And I think that's vitally important when it comes to our ability to lead us and affect change. Remind me again of the question, Adam.
How should men show more vulnerability and empathy in the business world?
Thank you. Yeah. So I think, for me, it always does start with conversation. It starts with the fact that I may share something, personal, like with my team, or it may be if it's a business challenge, I may say, what, as a business, we're facing, this challenge. I'd love for us to be creative, and I would draw the experience of other people by actually just owning the fact that actually this is a difficult period for me as the leader, and also for the business, but also mindful of the fact we have a lot of skill sets and a lot of experience, and so for me, I feel like it first has to be conversational, has to be personable, and for me, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm not. I always find it's strength to be vulnerable. I don't see vulnerability as weakness. So again, it all comes down to belief determining your behavior. Because if you believe vulnerability is something that shows weakness, you're not going to behave out of that. But if you do, then actually you're going to be able to share with confidence. And the thing that I've noticed with vulnerability is when I'm vulnerable, everybody starts to be vulnerable, because trust is then built. If trust is then built, then you can actually change a life, change a business, because it has to start with honesty. And I guess the umbrella of that is integrity, your key principles of what you believe is true, and staying true to that. And so that's how I would cultivate it within the home and the workplace. Is you've got to be the one that's, I always say, I like to see somebody's belly. If somebody keeps showing me all the good stuff and not showing me the humanness of it, and people say, Matt, you have a great balance of actually sharing the things that you're proud of and good at, but also you share some of your own suffering, and I feel like that's what makes it, relatable.
Love it. Very cool. Very good. I suppose my final question really, which is all around, again, I suppose leadership styles, because, we've got a wide diversity of people in, listening in. And I suppose my question really is all about what are the main differences in leadership styles that between what men use and what women use, and how does not only what the differences are, but is there a specific type of balance that that we must engage based on a particular culture within the business? I suppose there's a double kind of whammy question there. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think that, the thing that I admire about women is that they're very, very teachable. And I think they have a genuine desire to learn and grow, and are not so ego driven. It's hard for me to actually think and name women that I see with big egos. With men, I could name thousands. If I think of ego, I'm just seeing pictures of men.
Of course.
I'm not really seeing, and I think that's a big challenge. I think I love companies that excel in what they do, but they have such a heart-centeredness, such a gentleness, and a desire to listen. Because I think that a lot of businesses, they make the mistake of making it about them and not about the audience or the consumer or the one that's going to buy. And I find that women are better at that, because I think they go through the process more. Whereas men, we tend to be very directive. We kind of know what we want without kind of going through the process. And so for me, the differences and what we really need to see within leadership is a balance of vision, but also a balance of heart and detail, and for me, those two need to marry up in order to really affect, I think, the world and the way that we do business.
Love it. Very cool. Well, this is a really interesting conversation, the whole kind of men and women, kind of what I call energy and, behaviors and habits, because it is something that we haven't really explored. And it's not something that really kind of comes up in conversations, whether you're listening to a podcast or, I know that you do some regular shows on Clubhouse as well with some of our mutual colleagues and friends, and but few and far between in terms of really having a deeper understanding of how it can relate to everyday living, right? Whether you're an employee, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a business owner or in senior management, I guess, the fundamentals don't really change. Do you know what I mean, Mark? And I think you highlighted some really good areas there. Tell us a little bit more about your new book, because I know your new book just came out very, very recently. Tell us a little bit more about that, because I know that there's a personal story attached to that, but also that you kind of also relate it back to there's some stuff on business there, there's some stuff on family in there, and I suppose it's kind of what I call the human project as such. But tell us more about Mark of a Man.
Yeah, Mark of a Man, it's available on Kindle and paperback at all the major book retailers. Really happy that it's in Barnes & Noble over in the States, Booktopia in Australia, Waterstones in the UK, yes. So I'm really happy for that. I mean, the essence of Mark of a Man, and while I have focused it for men, it isn't just for men, and I'll explain why I think it's good for women to read. I mean, it's the essence of it is to help men become better men, and I really wanted to lift the lid on the expectations and the responsibilities of being a man, whether that's in the home or in the workplace, which obviously, as you said, it's a nice cluster. But at the end of the day, we can never escape ourselves. I'm always fascinated by that. The amount of times I would have loved to have jumped out of my own body and hid from myself, and we know that the most important relationship we have is with ourselves. And therefore, rather than us trying to run away from it, which I think typically a lot of men do, to sit in something is different to wallowing in it. And I talk about the process of sitting in an emotion, acknowledging the emotion and understanding why it's there and what it really represents, and then how to really express that emotion as a man. And then I like to go a little deeper around, the responsibilities of what it really means to be a man, both as a partner, as a friend, as a brother, as a son, as a businessman, whatever that is, what it really means, what are the responsibilities that I believe men should be carrying. And then I talk about the expectations. So I talk about some of the struggle, and I do talk on a number of chapters through the lens of my own divorce, realizing there's not a lot out there for men. If you think of magazines, there's only Men's Health. But if you think of, women's magazines, they've got so many things, so many resources, groups, but, nothing for men. So I thought, I wanted to create a resource for men that are maybe find it difficult to understand their emotion and really find their identity, but also to challenge men, as we were talking about in the podcast, challenging men in terms of how they act and behave, the way they talk to women in particular, the way they see women. So there is some challenge in there in terms of how we're showing up in life. And then I do dive into like the masculine and the feminine energy, because I think that's so important.
Very cool. Love it. Very good. Awesome. So listen, guys, for you guys that are interested more to learn about Mark and about masculine, feminine energy, how that applies to business, how that applies to your personal life, then what we're going to do is if you just do yourselves a favor, you can check out Mark's book by clicking on the links below. Depending on where you are in the world, of course, we've got listeners from all over the world, I believe in 35 different countries, which is great. So make sure you check out Mark's book. And if you do purchase the book, or if you do reach out to Mark, please do mention the podcast, because then he can put 2 and 2 together. And if you do make a purchase, make sure that you leave a 5-star review, or at least a review. No pressure there, by the way, but it's all good. Listen, Mark, just want to say thanks very much for being on the show today. We really appreciate your time, and it's been fascinating.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and you're a great host as well, Adam, because it's very, when you have an interview and it's engaging and it's authentic, and rather than you stick to your questions, you go with what's naturally being discussed. It makes a massive difference. So credit to you.
Appreciate that. And well, I think it's also down to the years of experience that I've been doing this for a long time. And, some of the people that come onto the show, and they're like, hey, so I'm so impressed by, the whole kind of interview and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah. But the reality is that it takes preparation. And there's so many people, and, I think there's almost 3 million podcasts out there in the world, which in reality, it's kind of, sort of the icing on the cake. It's very, very little compared to like maybe the amount of published books that come out every year. But in reality, it just absolutely flabbergasts me that the fact that, a host of a show, because, I love this show. I think it's fantastic. I think we add so much value, and we have so many great loyal listeners from around the world, is that preparation is key. Absolutely. Preparation is key. And you learn so much from just, from our conversations and conversations with any others. And so, no, I really appreciate the compliment. So thank you very much. Very cool. So listen, guys, there's enough from me and Mark. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and we'll see you back in again on the next Game Changers audio experience. Take care. And from me and Mark, see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening into today's show. I hope that you have enjoyed today's show. Just a reminder, we love creating this amazing podcast show. It wouldn't be as successful if it wasn't for you guys. So we want to make sure that we would love it if you would be able to reciprocate and write an amazing, whether it be a 1-star or 5-star review. If you're listening to this on Apple, go to Apple on iTunes and go to the Game Changers audio experience, leave a 1 or a 5-star review, whichever you prefer. If you're listening to this on Android, whether it be on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and all the good Android platforms, go to podchaser.com. That's podchaser.com, and leave a 1 or a 5-star review on there. We'll be extremely grateful. Thanks very much for tuning in. We've got some great shows coming up. Cheers.